At Four River Smokehouse, for a limited time, take $5 off on orders of $25 or more when ordering in-store or by phone when you mention Gators Breakdown. Sign up with MyBookie and use our promo code GATORS to get your first ever deposit match dollar for dollar. Bet anything, anywhere, anytime with MyBookie.
Want more Gators Breakdown? Join Gators Breakdown Plus. Starting at $3 a month, get access to unique episodes, plus a blog, chat room, giveaways, shoutouts, and more. Gators Breakdown Plus is furthering the interaction with fans and listeners like you. Head to GatorsBreakdown.supportingcast.fm to join Gators Breakdown Plus today. Gators Breakdown, because there's never a dull moment in Gator Nation.
The Gators Breakdown podcast is ready to go. I'm your host, David Waters, and you can find me on Twitter at GatorDave_SEC. Coming at you, Florida, Georgia week. Not as big for Florida as it has been in the past, but going against the number one team in the country and the rivals, Georgia Bulldogs. So there we go. Hoping for that big upset versus the number one team in the country and the rivals from up north. Game in Jacksonville, neutral site. Get you previewed all up here on Gators Breakdown. My good friends Robby, Steltenpohl, Spencer Van Horn from A Rich Tradition podcast are going to join me here to preview Georgia. They're a lot like me. Have the podcast, but Georgia side of things, they're from up there in Georgia. Georgia fans can give a lot of insight on Georgia, kind of like you get here on Gators Breakdown. So not necessarily the normal beat writer side of it. You'll get a different take on it. More so kind of like what you get here from me on Gators Breakdown. So good perspective there, and they've been on the show before, of course. So going back and getting those guys back in here to give us a preview of the number one team in the country, the Georgia Bulldogs. So plenty to get into. We'll get into Georgia from their perspective. We'll talk a little bit of Florida with them as well. Just going all over the place. I mean, this is going to be a deep preview there with those two guys. So, and there's a lot to get into with the number one team in the country there and what they bring to the table. So it will be probably pretty lengthy when we start looking at Georgia and having a conversation with those two guys. Deep dive into Georgia, and then I'll give my path to a victory for the Gators. It's going to take a lot. It's going to take a lot for these Gators to get that upset, but we'll get into it right here on this episode of Gators Breakdown. And right here, I am joined by Robby, Steltenpohl, and Spencer Van Horn from A Rich Tradition podcast. You guys, they've been on here at Gators Breakdown before a couple of years ago. I know we all got together, gave a good look at Florida, Georgia. You guys joining me here on Gators Breakdown again from A Rich Tradition podcast. Man, this is going to be a Florida, Georgia preview like none other out there. So, Robby, Spencer, thanks for joining, man.
Dude, I'm thankful to be asked back. I mean, I say one thing on Twitter to some of your Gator faithful, and I feel like I'm about to get stoned like Steven. So, and my middle name is Steven, so it felt a little weird.
With a PH, by the way.
Yeah, I hate you. But no, I'm so glad to be here and talk about the biggest game of the year for us.
Yeah,
yes, thanks for having us back.
Yeah, thanks, Spencer, man. Spencer, let everybody else know. You also, and I have a few Gator fans in Valdosta. They let me know when I'm on the radio there. So let everybody know what you got going on in Valdosta as well.
Yeah, I do a radio show in the mornings on Fox Sports Radio Valdosta, 11:50 a.m., 94.3 FM from about 7 to 9 in the morning. X's and O's show. We do a lot of college football and talk a lot of Georgia and Florida State and a lot of Southeastern Conference. So it's a good time, and we appreciate David coming on as frequently as he does.
Yeah, so Gators Breakdown here, A Rich Tradition podcast for you two guys. More college football. You guys expand out past Florida and Georgia and the SEC. You talk all college football. Give our listeners, if they want any more college football coverage that's just not Florida-centric, what do you guys bring to the table?
I think Spencer and I try to do our absolute best to not allow politics or the constant narratives that the media creates. We try not to follow those. Like, we don't even talk about the playoff until the first playoff rankings come out. We do a review of the week prior. We do a preview of the week coming up. We do a question of the week for our listeners. But we also try to tack on some recruiting. Like, we talk about some national recruiting stuff. But I really do think, just like you and Will, the many episodes I've watched with you guys, like, I think Spencer and I bring a candor and a relationship that him and I have had for a while. We just bring a different dynamic to the conversation, I think, at times. So,
yeah, we've known each other for quite some time, and we tend to follow kind of maybe the big games of the week, and then we try to sprinkle in some of the other things that we think are important around, and coaching changes and other maybe stories that are happening in college football that affect college football, or kind of maybe affect the action that is happening for that week. So yeah, we try to sprinkle it around everywhere, in maybe about an hour or so, maybe a little over an hour.
Even though we swear every week we're going to go under an hour.
No, I know.
We tell each other before we start recording, this is going to go under an hour, and then it's an hour and 15 minutes.
Yep.
Only got 5 games to pick this week. We can do this.
There we
5 games to pick, and then we add 3 games by the end of it, and we're breaking down.
Oh, there you go.
We're also the weirdos who, like, will break down Coastal Carolina versus App State. Like, we just I think we all love college football. Anyone who watches your show loves college football, but my wife says that I have a healthy obsession. So that's probably, I think that's insulting in the way she says it, but it's okay. She loves me regardless. But also, go Braves. Like, we have this.
Hey, you read my mind. That's exactly where I was going next. If you're watching the YouTube version right now, you see Robby, you see Spencer with the Atlanta Braves A's hat on. Go Braves in the World Series. So I don't know when you listen to this, Gators Breakdown listeners, but just know all three Braves fans here. I don't bring Braves fan talk much on Twitter. I know my lane, I know my role, Gator talk, but I'll sprinkle in there here and there. So, all right, let's get started so we could get back to watching the World Series right here as we record, during the night this week. But all right, guys, let's start with it. We'll start at position right quick, and quarterback position. Of course, court on both sides. And we might see 4 quarterbacks playing in this game between both sides of Florida and Georgia. So what's the latest on the Georgia quarterback situation? Stetson Bennett filled in admirably for JT Daniels so far. Word is Daniels coming along nicely from that injury. So I guess it's a loaded question here. Who gets to start, and do we see both?
Spencer, I don't know if you saw the latest updates. I'll share if you have, if you haven't.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I always feel weird. I don't want to take time from Spencer if he has something to say. So the latest today is, like, this was the most important practice. It's called Bloody Tuesday. That's what Kirby calls it, the toughest practice of the week. Apparently it was a 50-50 split on first team reps for JT Daniels and Stetson Bennett, but all indication by insiders and stuff like that is that it's going to be JT Daniels that starts. However, Kirby did say multiple times that Stetson Bennett will play. I do believe that, but I don't believe it's going to be the way some people are creating this narrative of rotation. I don't think it's going to be that way. There's a reason why Kirby for several weeks said our starter is JT Daniels. Stetson Bennett is filling in. He's doing a great job, blah, blah, blah. So, like, I fully expect to see JT Daniels as a starter, pending nothing else gets pulled or strained or anything like that.
Yeah, and I think that's been consistent with this week, that Kirby has said is, as long as everybody's healthy, which has been the first key to everything. We want everybody to be healthy, and if JT is healthy, then we'll go in that direction, and he will be the starter. And that seems to be the report that that Robby is mentioning there. But that seems to be consistent with what Kirby has said all along. As long as JT is healthy, he's our guy. He's who we want to go with. And it kind of goes back to some of the stuff that was talked about last year. Is he ready to fully play, JT, ready to fully play the position of quarterback? Is he mobile? Can he make all the throws that you want him to make? And if he can't, or if that changes during the game, I think Georgia's in a really good position with a backup who has a ton of experience and successful experience.
Yeah, is there any worry the chemistry messing up now with what Stetson's been able to do and the offense kind of humming along and then inserting JT back in there?
I wish I could say absolutely yes. Like there is a concern there. The way I view it is that like JT's not the only new player that's apparently going to be on the field this week.
Yeah.
Arian Smith, Rosemy, and Jermaine Burton are all expected back as well. So like if there were to be any issues, like I think it would be for both quarterbacks,
right?
As you know, as far as chemistry and being on the same page and stuff. I don't know if you agree with this, David, and you don't watch every Kirby interview or press conference, but like Kirby doesn't really ever fluff things. Like he may be a little iffy on who's going to start quarterback, but as far as like if you're injured or if you're not injured, he's pretty transparent. Like, hey, he's a little dinged up. Just so y'all know, if you ever want to know, if he says he's dinged up, we may try to get him out there. That means he's probably not playing. But whenever I hear Kirby talk about this situation, he talks about having faith in both quarterbacks. Like I believe that. I don't think that's coach speak. And I think this season, if anything, has shown us whenever he says, what was it, the Arkansas game, where he was saying, all week, I have faith in either quarterback or whoever starts. If JT can't go, then Stetson's ready. And look what happened in that game. Like Stetson was 100% ready and there was no issue, I know that's long-winded, but I just do think there's a little bit of Kirby talk that kind of fits in that narrative.
Spencer, I'll extend that question a little bit and let you wrap up quarterback talk here. As coming at it from the Gator perspective just a little bit, I do wonder. I mean, I could be looking at it the wrong way, not knowing how healthy JT Daniels is. But I tell you what, I mean, Stetson Bennett, his mobility kind of worries me a bit. With the way he's able to, zone read and maybe get a 15, 20-yard run. He doesn't run many of them, but when they do, they seem to pick the perfect opportunity to bring it out and get those yards there for Stetson, and maybe even escaping the pocket a bit. I know Brenton Cox was talking tonight in the media, and he was like, hey, I remember when we were playing scout team at Georgia, and I couldn't catch the guy. So, I do wonder now, looking at JT Daniels, I was like, maybe it could benefit Florida somewhat if he is a quote unquote statue back there and maybe helping, or at least Florida's defenders will know where the quarterback is instead of one that can move around and escape the pocket a bit.
Well, I think that goes back to sort of Kirby's comments about we want to make sure he's capable of fully playing the position of quarterback. And you go back to the Mississippi State game from last year, there are two plays in that ball game that a lot of Georgia fans should go to say, this is what coach is talking about. This is what Kirby is talking about, where he's eluding defenders. And we might not ask him to take off on those designed runs, but he's going to be able to sit back there and slide around the pocket, step around. His feet are going to be good. He's going to have the mobility to move around. There's no issues with the knee. That was the concern last year. No issues with the knee. He can move around and he can avoid defenders by stepping up or sliding back or shifting over. He can kind of stay mobile enough to keep plays alive in the pocket.
Yeah, so interesting aspect there. Like I said, we could see four quarterbacks if JT comes out, gets injured again. You never know with that injury.
Can you not speak that into existence?
Well, I'm not trying to, believe me. But if it happens, Stetson comes in with Florida side, you can see. I mean, I expect to see both Anthony Richardson and Emory Jones, so it could be interesting. Look, we saw four quarterbacks last year. I think Emory played last year for Florida too. So you had Trask and Emory, and both quarterbacks for Georgia last year with Mathis and Bennett there last year. So it could be 2 years in a row where you get a number of quarterbacks in this matchup. So here we go. We'll extend offense talk just a little bit. Running back Kendall Milton, Kenny McIntosh banged up for Georgia. Milton will probably miss a few weeks. McIntosh questionable versus Florida. But look, Zamir White, James Cook, that's who you're going to be looking out for right now for just Georgia run game. So injuries there, White and Cook, they should be fine to carry the load behind an offensive line that somewhat disappointing last season, but those guys have bounced back this season and helped lead the way for this Georgia ground attack.
Yeah, I also because I think he's done a great job when he's been asked to play, is Donovan Edwards as well. The kid out of Colquitt County, he's done well. I think Kirby said tonight, or the expectation is actually McIntosh will be back for this week as well. I think Milton's going to be done probably till a Georgia Tech game, which I think goes back to the whole situation like with JT Daniels last year, where it's kind of like a cleared, but we want to be 100% sure, because Milton is our future, like that kid, y'all, you've seen it, everyone's seen it. Like that kid will run someone over, and he's very fast as well. But to your point on the offensive line, like I'm gonna be honest, this offensive line, I thought this year was going to be the kind of downward year. Like if you would have at the beginning of last season said, oh, who's going to be better, 2020 or 2021, I would have put $100,000 on 2020. And, that, like you said, they were a disappointment. And this year, this team, they lose Erickson on like the third play of the season, and Sawyer has to come in, and we move center, and we move out to left tackle with other players. And this O-line has really, really done an incredible job. They have surpassed my expectations. I know that they have slowly but surely moved up the ranks of, is it Cole? Always mess up his name. Cole Kublik?
Yeah.
Cole Kublik, like he is slowly moved. They have slowly moved up his rankings of offensive line as the season has gone on. It might be one of the most impressive jobs. This whole season, in my opinion, is not about Kirby. It is about the assistant coaches and how well they've done. And I know we'll get to the wide receivers here in a minute, but like Cortez Hankton and Matt Luke have just done a great job this season.
Spencer, I'll go back to the running backs just for a second. Look, we know Zamir White. We saw him very first play versus Florida last year and what he was able to do for a 75-yard touchdown run. So we know him. And James Cook, you go and almost before every season, it's like James Cook's a breakout player. James Cook's a breakout player. We've seen more glimpses this year than we've seen in years past.
Yeah, and there was kind of a part of me that's kind of thinking to myself, not that anybody's happy to see anybody injured, but at the same time, there seems to be a potential. I want to see more of Zamir White. I want to see more of James Cook. And we've gotten a good bit of James Cook at different times, almost a total of 100 yards receiving and running the football out of the backfield. He's averaging the 6.3 yards per carry right now, 42 yards per game on the ground right now. So I think some people would think to themselves, while we don't want anybody injured, we're excited to maybe see a duo of White and Cook for most of the ball game, as those guys are their own kind of dynamic. Zamir White with a really incredible run against, I don't even remember who it was, but where his knee almost touches the ground and he's able to stay on balance Arkansas and get into the end zone. So, I mean, the talent is there for both of those guys. And if there is a quarterback issue, if there is a chemistry issue like we talked about earlier, I think Georgia fans, with the offensive line that Robby is talking about and Zamir White and James Cook, you kind of feel good about leaning on those guys till the chemistry gets figured out.
Yeah, so injuries there, of course, but still talent leading the way there for Georgia. But talk about injuries. We mentioned injuries at running back. The wide receiver position just dealt with them since back to the springtime for Georgia. George Pickens still out. Dominic Blaylock probably still out, unless you guys have an update there. Arian Smith, I know you brought him up, questionable, was coming into this interview. You guys can update it there. Jermaine Burton, Marcus Rosemy-Jackson should be close to 100%. In the meantime, Kyrus Jackson, one of the best names in college football right now, Ladd McConkey, redshirt freshman, Justin Robinson, all those guys in the mix. And Georgia's leading receiver, tight end Brock Bowers, leading the way. 25 receptions, 416 yards, 6 touchdowns. I don't think anybody saw that coming right now, no matter if you're a Georgia fan or not. So even with the injuries piling up, a few targets can help with this efficient passing game.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, if you would go back to the spring in February, or whenever George tore his ACL, you would have told me in that spot, David, you DM me and say, "Hey, Robby, I'm from the freaking future, and Pickens will not be there, and your leading wide receiver will be Ladd McConkey, and your best target will be a freshman tight end not named Darnell Washington." Yeah. I would have said, well, we've lost 4 games already, this season. The fact that those guys have, and AD Mitchell as well, the 3-star kid who no one really wanted until Georgia saw him at a clinic, and worked him out and offered him on the spot. Mixture of him and then just looking at what like you were mentioning, like we talked about earlier, what's to come. Like Arian Smith is supposed to be back. Rosemy, I mean, like, is there probably a kid in the skill position that's more hungry to come back to this game than Rosemy?
Yeah.
Of course, the injury is not anyone's fault. It's just a freak accident.
Yeah.
But of course, like his very first catch of his career is a long touchdown pass where he breaks his ankle. Justin Robinson is out. Dominic Blaylock will be out. George Pickens obviously will be out, but there still is Kyrus Jackson. There is Dominic Blaylock, or there's Jermaine Burton who will be back. Rosemy will be back. I've leaned really on let's hold off calling Georgia's offense elite in any kind of way, because I'm not saying they can't get there, but they haven't really needed to lean on a lot of stuff because the defense has just been so elite. The field has been short so often. But man, it does really kind of make me get a little giddy, in my Georgia fanness of thinking of these guys being in these positions where, it's no longer a freshman Lad McConkey running these routes. It's a very fast, very big, Jermaine Burton or Rosemy who are faster, who can run routes better. Like that really does excite me. That doesn't automatically mean that it's going to be rainbows and unicorns, but it does give me a little hope that this offense can make that evolution step that we've been waiting for freaking 3 years for.
Especially, you think Pickens being out, it just kind of opens it up. That's why you hear so many names now for Georgia involved in this passing game.
Yeah, Pickens being one of those guys, and then I think Jermaine and Kyrus Jackson sort of being slower to come back. They've had little things that have kept them at bay, if you will. And yeah, I think Pickens being out has opened it up for a lot of guys, but Burton and Rosemy and Kyrus Jackson, those guys being down as well have certainly allowed for a Lad McConkey. The injury to Darnell Washington has allowed for Brock Bowers to be a little bit more of a feature. And I wouldn't even be surprised if a little bit of this, and maybe JT would be leaning on them if he was the quarterback as well. So maybe that's irrelevant. But yeah, the injury to Pickens for sure, but the other injuries as well has certainly allowed these other guys to have an opportunity to step up. And Ladd and Brock have done a really good job taking advantage of that opportunity.
David, do you mind if I ask you a question? I'm so sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'd love to hear your feedback.
Maybe this goes into as well. So, how does Georgia use Bowers? Is he the package? Is he a blocker? And well, of course he's a receiver. You got the numbers to prove it. But is it a giveaway if he's on the field that Georgia's looking more to pass than they are to run?
Before the Arkansas game, I would have said, he does a lot of both.
Yeah.
But in the Kentucky game, in the Auburn game, it really did kind of seem that we used Darnell Washington more for run than we did Bowers. But even though Bowers does do a great job of both, I think Bowers has shown himself to, like, not to bring up a trigger name here, but like he has been the Rick Gilbert that we kind of expected. Rick Gilbert was the tight end that everyone envisioned pushing out to slot, move Darnell in. Then like, what do you do? And Bowers has kind of been that a Rick Gilbert, what are you going to do kind of thing. I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to ask you a question.
Yeah.
When fast forward, rewind back to May, whenever, all the crap went down, like when you look at what has happened with this receiving corps at Georgia, like, what are your thoughts? Like, how do you view this coaching staff now? Yes, it's only 7 games, and yes, there's a lot more to play, but what do you think of this Georgia coaching staff and the development of these younger guys?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's definitely impressive in what they've done there because, I mean, also just throw back in that JT Daniels is not the one throwing him the ball. It's Stetson Bennett. So you've got what, quote unquote, a backup quarterback, quote unquote, backup receivers. And, look, it all falls on that run game. If Georgia wasn't able to run the ball, I'm not sure they'd be able to do it. But, I mean, look, we kind of knew that would be the identity of this Georgia team anyway. If they can run the ball, you can pass with who they're doing it with, who they're doing it with Stetson Bennett and those numbers of receivers there. So it really goes into, and look, you guys, Gators Breakdown listeners know, you probably know from my Twitter too, recruiting matters. Stars matter. And you recruit well, and this is what plays into it. Yes, Stetson Bennett may not be a highly ranked quarterback, highly ranked overall player, but he's certainly throwing the players that are, and the guys in front of him blocking for him are highly ranked guys too. So it's another feather in the cap of Kirby and staff of, I'm going to go get my guys, and if they need to be on the field, they're going to be ready early, because that's what high level recruiting does. These guys are going to be ready early on to go contribute for a team like Georgia.
Well, and I was going to just add on to that. That's been one of the things that Georgia's has been able to sustain some of these injuries, George Pickens and even the others, the way that they have been, and even some of the ones on defense, is just that's sort of the fruits of the labor there on the recruiting trail. You nailed it on the head there. Yeah,
and not every guy's a 5-star, but when you surround them with the high-level 4-stars and 5-stars, I mean, these guys are gonna, you can spread it around a little bit. So
yeah, iron sharpening iron a little bit.
There you go.
Hey, that's biblical. That's my realm.
There you go. Very good.
Football season is also tailgating season, and there's nothing better for a tailgate than Four River Smokehouse. Named the #1 barbecue in the South by Southern Living magazine, Four River Smokehouse is a family-owned barbecue restaurant specializing in 18-hour smoked Angus brisket. Got to get the brisket, got to get those ribs, get those pulled chicken, pulled pork sliders as well. Get all of it with those home-style sides and those fresh-baked desserts at any of Four River Smokehouse's 13 Florida locations. Four Rivers party packages come tailgate ready, so you can spend more time hanging out, watching games, talking to everybody, talking to your friends at the tailgate. You don't have to worry about all the time at the grill. Enjoy the gridiron pack for 4 for $54.99 or the party for 12 pack for $109. Each package includes Four Rivers award-winning barbecue meats, home-style sides, buns, and signature barbecue sauce. Now, for a limited time, take $5 off on orders of $25 or more when ordering in-store or by phone when you mention Gators Breakdown. So Gators, whether you live in Gainesville or coming to Jacksonville for the game, Four Rivers has got you covered. If you're in Gainesville, swing by the Gainesville location located in Butler Plaza. There's 2 locations here in the Jacksonville area. If you're coming in for Florida, Georgia, hit them Four Rivers up. If you're tailgating at home in the Orlando, Tampa, Tallahassee areas as well, then you can also enjoy the best barbecue anywhere in Florida at Four River Smokehouse. Also, big week in the betting world. What is a lock? A lock is simply put, it's a bet you can't lose. And with MyBookie, you can't lose with the NBA lock of the season. When you bet on either team to score between the Dallas Mavericks or the Denver Nuggets this Friday, you win. An NBA game has never gone scoreless, so this is a sure bet. Place your bet, they score, you win. It is that easy. Get paid Friday, wake up Saturday, and throw down on UFC 267 and all the college football action. This weekend, MyBookie is also giving users a $100 risk-free wager on the light heavyweight championship fight between Jan Blachowicz and Glover Teixeira. So don't wait. Head to mybookie.ag and use promo code Gators to get in on the NBA lock of the season. That's promo code Gators. It's a lock. Get your season started with a win. You can thank me later. College football, NFL, the World Series, NBA, NHL, UFC. You can bet on it all at MyBookie. Bet anything, anywhere, anytime with MyBookie. All right, look, guys, we know Kirby knows defense. No surprise there. It's his calling card. It's what he does best. But defensive coordinator Dan Lanning, what is his contribution to this role? It's always hard to, Kirby's been able to kind of buck the trend of, hey, this is a Nick Saban assistant. That's Nick Saban's defense. That's not the assistant. That's not the defensive coordinator's defense. That's Nick Saban's defense. Okay, well, we know Kirby had a lot to do with how good Alabama was by what he's been able to do at Georgia so far. So what's Dan Lanning's role in this offense? What is the split of Kirby's defense versus Lanning's defense? A mix of it. I'm not trying to shame Lanning here at all,
Yeah.
but just trying to get a sense of roles here in, these guys that head up the best defense in the country.
I'm gonna be honest with you. Until this year, like I love Dan Lanning, like I really do. But it was until this season where you heard all off season how Kirby has been more hands off than he's ever been. You heard about how he's letting Monken run the offense, he's letting Lanning run the defense, and you kind of don't know if you buy it or not. But then you start watching the games, and you start watching him on the sidelines. And yeah, like he is talking when they're huddled up, he is talking to them and everything. But when Lanning's calling plays now, Kirby's not beside him the whole time. Like Lanning is dialing this stuff up. And I think what Lanning brings to the table that Kirby did occasionally, but didn't do nearly as much as they have this year, is the bringing pressure from all directions.
Yeah.
It helps whenever you have 6 Mongoids playing between the 4 rotating defensive lineman spot. That does help. But the way he brings blitzes with Nakobe Dean and Channing Tindall and the corner blitzes, like there's just always someone else coming. You rarely see Georgia bring only 3. And even on third down, like it is always pressure. It is always pressure, always pressure. And we've run more zone this year than probably people realize. Kirby's always been man-to-man, high pressure. And this year we've run a lot of zone. And I think long-winded, I'm sorry. But I think that's kind of what Dan Lanning has brought, is an evolution in a way of this defense, all the way from the blitzing from all over the field, but also the kind of zone coverage as opposed to man-to-man all the time.
Spencer, we talked to Dan Mullen yesterday, and he said the exact same thing Robby just did. He goes, you don't know where the pressure's coming from, and especially on third down. So now for Florida, look, whether Anthony Richardson starts or not, he's going to be on the field. He's a young quarterback. He doesn't have, a lot of experience out there. This Dan Lanning-led offense, you're probably going to pose some problems for a young quarterback. So we'll see, if he's got the playmaking ability to get out of it. But at least just talking scheme and just talking football, I think Anthony Richardson is probably going to be swimming a bit, and we'll see if his playmaking ability is able to take over at all.
Yeah, and I think that's what Dan has been worried about, and maybe even Lincoln early on at Oklahoma. That's what you're worried about, putting these young guys in high pressure situations where they are not only going to have to make reads on a regular defense, but they're also going to have to pick up blitzes and maybe even try to call things out before the snap and those different things.
Spencer, not only making reads, man, but making reads really fast.
Yes, no, absolutely. Making reads really fast. So before the snap and after the snap. So and I think that's where maybe some of Dan Mullen, you can maybe defend him with some of the time that AR-15 has been given on the field is, hey, man, he's not ready to handle that stuff. Emory Jones is ready to handle before the snap, maybe a little bit more of after the snap, and we're just a little more comfortable with him operating the offense. And when a guy like Anthony Richardson gets out there, I think if you're a Florida fan or if you're Dan Mullen, you're sort of nervous about what could be coming his way in terms of, exotic blitzes and things like that will confuse him and make things difficult. And maybe that's where, if you're Dan Mullen, you're trying to keep things as simple as possible.
Yeah, expect that. Get his package of plays ready to go, and get him as deep in the playbook as you can. But this is going to probably have to be go make some plays. From your stop from your quarterback there. So, got a simple question, but I'll extend it. Did you ever expect this defense to be this good? I mean, we knew they'd be good, but this good, I'm not sure anybody saw this good. I mean, preseason All-American Jordan Davis, fifth-year Devontae Wyatt, sophomore Jalen Carter, as veterans of the group there on the defensive line. It starts right there. But look, you include those linebackers, and Robby, you brought the names up. Channing Tindall leads the teams with tackles with 33. Nakobe Dean, Quay Walker, Dean, semifinalist last year for the Butkus Award, leader of the defense, looks to be back for this game as well. And a lot of high-profile names contributing to this level of defense. Again, we knew would be good, but I'm not sure we knew this good.
Well, I mean, like Spencer and I talked about this, I think in August when we were doing our preview of the SEC. One of the things that I said that Kirby did by going to get a Rick Gilbert, by going to get Tyke Smith, by going to get or Kendrick. I always mess up his name, so I just say Kendrick. The thing that Kirby did was take away his excuses. Who freaking knew that he would not need them?
Yeah.
Because not only is a Rick Gilbert MIA, which that's a whole nother conversation, but Tyke Smith, was injured, had messed up his foot before the season started. Then the game that he's finally going to start before the Kentucky game, he tears his ACL and he's out for the year. And then Amir Speed, which adds more, which was supposed to be a heavy contributor, he's been injured. He will hopefully supposedly be back this season, or this week as well. Like I say all that to say, like the concern was, okay, DBs, like what are we going to do? Like we know we're going to have a really good front seven, but our DBs, like how are they going to play? Oh my gosh, I remember thinking or talking at the lunch table with some of my fellow teachers, like, man, Georgia better get after every quarterback because their DBs aren't going to be very good. Man, that was wrong. Like that, I'm not saying they're elite. I'm not saying they're going to win some awards or whatever. But like, I think Spencer would agree, this defensive backfield to me is what makes this defense, like, yes, the front seven is what makes it so elite, but it's the back 4 or 5 guys that have stepped up so much this year that has kept it at a top tier, like elite level, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think there's been moments there have been maybe moments where fans have thought, or maybe folks have said things like, Kirby's gone out and he's gotten 24 points against Arkansas, and he's sort of shut it down because he knows he doesn't need anything else because of how well the defense is playing. And maybe there's an element that he knew this front group was going to be really, really good, and he knew that it had at least the potential to be really, really good. And so maybe he and the coaching staff were able to keep things simple for that defensive backfield and those new guys that were coming in. And in that effort, that if this front seven can be as good as we're hoping and wanting, then maybe those guys can take a ton of pressure off of the guys in the defensive backfield. But I think the other thing that we have coming up here, and it could potentially happen in this game if AR-15 does take off, if things do look better and open up things down the field a little bit more, which he was able to do with some big passes downfield against LSU. At some point, that defensive backfield is going to be tested with a different kind of passing attack and a different kind of quarterback that is able to elevate a passing attack to a level that is going to get to them. And so Georgia's still waiting on that moment. I think that's probably the biggest criticism right now, or maybe not criticism, but void that's been left open is, who is this Georgia? What is this Georgia defense when it comes to a quarterback that can really elevate an offense and take it to the next level? Georgia hasn't necessarily had to face that just yet. We thought maybe with Arkansas, and there's been some moments this season for Auburn, but ultimately we didn't see it against Georgia, and that has to do with them, but it also has to do with maybe those two offenses just aren't there yet. And you're looking at an Ohio State, you're looking at potentially Alabama and potentially Oklahoma, and maybe even this weekend with AR-15.
Yeah, and that's the hope for Florida. Richardson opens up this offense. There's no secret about it now. Whether it's going to be on a consistent basis versus this Georgia defense, but even the weaker opponents at the beginning of the season, last week versus LSU, Richardson does open up the offense. So you want to see that and see if that can bleed over into this Georgia game. But Spencer, you're right. And I was talking to Robby. I don't know if you know our good friend Josh. He's a friend of our good friend Bunker.
Josh Emery,
Josh Weatherton.
Okay.
But we were talking, behind the scenes and stuff, and it was just like, there's not to take anything away from the Georgia defense, but how fun would it be if it was this Georgia defense versus Alabama last year and Florida last year with those passing attacks? Like, just how fun as a football fan would that be?
That they could cover a wheel route.
But going to Spencer's point there, it's just there's not a Mac Jones, a Kyle Trask, and Kyle Trask and those weapons of Tony and Pitts and Devontae Smith and those receivers for Alabama. There's not that. Not to take anything away from Georgia, it's just that would just been fun to watch as a football fan. That would have been like, okay, here's a slobber knocker defense and a high flying offense. They've been so fun to watch. And look, I mean, it may not matter anyway. They're going to get a test eventually, and they'll probably pass it with flying colors.
Well, and the guys at college, what is it? The college football nerds that are on YouTube as well. They've talked about it, that good defenses are going to get pushed, that a good offense will always get the advantage over the good defense. And so there might not, like you said, there might not be a Trevor Lawrence or a Kyle Trask or a Tua or a Baker Mayfield this season, at least yet. There might not be one of those guys just yet. So Georgia might not have to face one of those, but what happens when they do? And that would be pretty incredible. And it could happen a little later down the line. But yeah, if this is Georgia against Kyle Trask, it might be another ball game where whoever's playing quarterback for Georgia is going to have to keep up no matter what, just because Kyle Trask and Kyle Pitts are going to get theirs.
And I just to add on to that conversation, I think I already referenced it a little bit, but I think what does make this defense so different, to your question, David, that you originally asked, what makes them so different is the depth on the D line. Like freaking Devontae Wyatt, like what the crap? Like this dude has been such a non-factor really for most of his time. We knew Jalen Carter was a freak a couple of times last year, but this year he has definitely went, God mode a couple of times. And, we have Thanos, in Jordan Davis, who just apparently has the 6 stones and he can just like evaporate a center anytime he wants.
Such a nerd.
You're welcome. Do you not see what's behind me? Come on.
Yes, no, I'm well aware.
But to me, it goes back to, and of course I'm going to freaking forget his name while we're recording. Number 4, our defensive end, Adam Anderson and
Nolan Smith.
Thank you. Nolan Smith has been one of the most disappointing players up until this year. His freshman year, he showed out. He had some great moments, but then for the last 2 years, last year or so wasn't that great. And last year, like I know for a fact that Kirby got in his face and Adam Anderson's face, because Anderson was about to transfer. If people don't know that, he was considering transferring, and Kirby said, like, you want to play? Well, you don't do the fundamentals. You don't do the things that we want you to do. It's not just about rushing the passer; it's also stopping the run. And this year, both Adam Anderson and Nolan Smith have just taken it to a whole nother level. And that's been what's so impressive to me, is just the depth across the board. And these guys that I didn't think were going to be elite have just kind of shown up this year.
Good stuff, man. It's going to be a heck of a matchup. We'll see. If Florida's got anything for them. Florida's able to run the ball a little bit earlier this year. That's kind of slowed down a bit once all the film's been out there. Florida's been beat up front too. So by the way, it could come at a better time for Florida, this offensive line going against this Georgia defensive front. Florida needed to heal some bumps and bruises up front there going against this Georgia defensive front. But guys, good stuff. Great preview there of Georgia. Ike, anything else you want to add quickly about this game?
Well, I was going to jump in real quick. You had a caller, or I think it was here on Twitter, somebody jumped in and had a conversation with you earlier this week, David, about jumping out to a fast start. Yeah. Georgia jumped out to a 14-0 lead early last year, and that didn't matter. Kyle Trask and right. Kyle Pitts, score 14 points in their sleep. So that wasn't a big deal for those two guys. What happens if the reverse could happen this time? Can you get creative with the ground game with AR-15 and then hit something down the field to Copeland, who's averaging 18 yards a catch? So could you do something like that and jump on Georgia early? And if it is Stetson Bennett or if it is JT Daniels, put the pressure on right away and say, okay, now come keep up. You're injured. You're beat up on the wide receiver group. Now come keep up with us.
That's one of my keys to the game, because I think since Dan Mullen's been head coach at Florida, 2018, I think it was a 10-0 Georgia lead. 2019, I think it was a 10-0 Georgia lead. And then last year, 14-0 Georgia lead, and finally able to come back and get that. We saw Florida come back once this year, down 21-3 versus Bama, and able to come back and make a game of it. Came back versus LSU with AR leading the charge in the last game as well. But you get down 14-0 versus this Georgia team, I'm not sure you're coming back against this defense. So something has to change for the trend of this game if Florida getting off to a better start. And I agree. I think with AR, it would get AR comfortable. It would maybe in some way make this Georgia defense feel somewhat human if you can get off to a 10-0 lead. I mean, look, I think I looked it up today. The only time Georgia has been down was 3-0 versus Auburn.
Yeah.
I think that's it.
I think so.
So
the thing that I'm also curious about, and you tweeted about it earlier this week, David. Yes, I stalk you on Twitter. Is it is about motivation.
Yeah.
And like, how motivated is Florida?
Focus,
and you're like, look, here, like, I know that they're going to be motivated. Like, I'm not stupid. You had a week off. You have a horrible taste in your mouth from what happened with the LSU game. And I would normally, like,
it's all about how long the motivation lasts.
Yes. But also, this Georgia team is probably pretty pissed for last year.
Oh, yeah.
And because, like, they're not going to forget the snapped ankle. They're not going to forget the Lewis Scene hit where he tried to take Pitts' soul. Like, he's not going to forget the, losing 2 DBs in the Tyreek Stevenson going out in that game. But also, like, and I don't think it's a big deal at all, by the way. I just want to say that before I say this. The Darth Vader outfit, after the game, and and Mullen enjoying the win, and he deserved the
But that was the week before. That was the week before versus Missouri.
Oh, my bad. Okay, my fault. But just I guess just the taste of defeat. Like, Jordan Davis didn't play in that game. Like, there's going to be this. I think there's motivation on both sides that I'm very curious to see how long it continues. I'm not foolish. Like, I've told so many people this week in just the 2 days that people have asked, hey, you think Georgia's going to blow them out? I don't. I don't know if they cover. Like, it's a 14.5 point spread, I think, right now. Like, I don't know if they cover that. I'm you didn't ask me for my prediction, but just to say, like, I think Georgia wins, but I don't think it's comfortable. I don't think it's close. I don't think it's a blowout. I think rivalries are rivalries for a reason. And I think Dan Mullins and AR-15 are going to have some answers for Georgia. So that's where I'm at with motivation.
All about the offensive line for me. If Florida can give any kind of time, and the timing's not going to be there consistently. Anthony Richardson's not going to have all day to throw all day long. It's just, can you pick your spots? And when you pick your spot and decide to go deep, do you have that extra tick of a second to get the pass off? That's going to be the difference. That's going to be the difference in the game to me.
I agree, and it's always about the trenches. And so the way you were able to get back in that ball game against Alabama, you were patient, I think, on the ground with your ground game, and that went a long way. You didn't necessarily panic. It's 21-3 at the end of the first quarter. There's still a lot of ball game left to play. The defense obviously stepped up in a major way, but being patient and being able to bully an Alabama front that you never really think to be bullied, and maybe you can channel that and come here and say, all right, we're gonna do something. There's a funny movie that mentions something about attacking the strengths of the other of the other guy, and nobody ever thinks to attack the strengths. So go right at them. See, you don't have anything else to lose. Go right at them.
Yeah, I mean, it's been Florida's MO. At the beginning part of this season, that was Florida's MO. Run downhill, and it worked for the most part. And we'll see if getting some of those offensive linemen a little more healthy will go a long way in trying to push something up front against this Georgia front. Hey guys, I can't thank you enough for joining us here. A Rich Tradition podcast. Check these guys out. Robby, Spencer on that podcast. Guys, where can they find the podcast at?
Yeah, we're on. I believe we're everywhere. We're on Spotify. Okay. We're on Apple, iTunes as well. So you can check it out there. Should be everywhere your podcasts are found.
And if you want more Florida Georgia coverage with these guys, I'll be on their podcast. So we'll get the other angle. We'll reverse it. So go look for a Rich Tradition podcast, and we'll have even more Florida Georgia talk on their side of things. Guys, I can't thank you enough.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, bud.
Ooh, there we go. Deep dive into Georgia there. Some Florida talk as well from Robby and Spencer. Tell you what, they can give you plenty of reasons why you can see this Georgia team is as dominant as they have been this season, but games still got to be played. So let's take an overall look at the statistics for both teams before we get into the path to victory for the Gators. You're looking at it right here. If you're on the YouTube version, you can get the graphics here, but here we go. Looking at it, total offense, Florida 9th in college football, Georgia 42nd in college football. Florida's got the second best total offense in the SEC. Georgia is 8th total offense in the SEC. Scoring offense, though, that's the difference. These total offensive yards don't mean much as much as scoring offense. Georgia's 13th in college football in scoring, 38.4 points per game. Florida's 26th, 34.4 points per game. Georgia's offense averaging 4 more points a game than the Gators. Rushing offense, Florida's still up there in college football. 4th overall, 2nd in the SEC. Georgia, 39th in college football in FBS, 6th in the SEC. Passing offense, not that big of a difference, leading Florida's way. Florida's 53rd overall in FBS. Georgia, 62. Florida, 247.4. Georgia, 237.4. So Florida averaging 10 more passing yards a game there. But, you look at it right here, touchdown and interception ratio. Georgia's taking care of the ball much better than Florida. Florida tie for 101st in touchdown to interception ratio, 1.3. 16 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Georgia, 17 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. But then you go and look at compared here. You don't compare defense to defense, but of course you kind of just take what I just told you about Florida and their offense and what they have to go against on that Georgia side of the ball on defense. I mean, if you're looking at the YouTube version, you can see it for yourself right here. But I'm going to go down the list of Georgia. Total defense, number 1 in the country. Scoring defense, number 1 in the country. Rushing defense, 2nd in the country. Passing defense, 2nd in the country. Passing efficiency defense, 2nd in the country. Of course, that's all first in the SEC as well. I mean, takeaways, Georgia tied for 68th in the country. So, not a heavy forcing turnover team. They just get off the field. They just get you off the field. Team probably going a little bit of shell playing against this Georgia team and not taking a whole lot of risk. But you look at it that way, you compare the takeaways for Florida's defense, 113th in the country for Florida, not forcing turnovers, of course. Georgia does have 8 interceptions for us this year. So, and really good in the red zone, tied for 5th in the country there. But if you expect that with all those number 1 in the SEC rankings and 1st and 2nd rankings there for FBS rankings for this Georgia defense. So 10, they're 10th in the country, Georgia is, in sacks per game. 1st in the SEC. Georgia has 24 sacks on the season. Florida's 3rd overall in the SEC, tied for 16th in the country with 21. So Georgia, 3 more sacks than Florida. Tackles for loss, you probably would expect that to be a little bit higher for Georgia given their defensive statistics. 57th in college football in FBS and then 6th in the SEC. They have 38 tackles for loss, only 1 more than Florida. Florida has 37. So look at it that way, but total defense, scoring defense, rushing defense, passing defense, 1st in the SEC, either 1st or 2nd in the country. Not telling you anything you don't know, but there, if you want to just kind of see it and see all the 1s and the 2s there for Georgia's defense, that's what you get there for that Georgia defense. So, what is a path to victory for the Gators? It's going to be tough. Looking at those stats right there, definitely going to be tough to get some points there on this Georgia defense. So, there's got to be a path, of course. We'll kind of going to just maybe stick to the football aspect of it. There is a narrow path here for Florida, unless something bonkers just happens, something you can't really expect, something you can't forecast, something you can't really account for or predict, anything like that. Just taking what we know so far. What have we seen game in and game out from these two teams? What is the path for a Gator victory? Maybe narrow, maybe slim, but upsets happen. How can it happen if we just look at the play on the field? First, start Anthony Richardson. No surprise there from the Gator side of things. That gives Florida the best chance. Maybe having played more, he doesn't necessarily have to start. I don't think you should waste any plays, any possessions. I think you should get the first snap of the game, and you ride with him there, especially if he's got the hot hand. I know Dan Mullen's going to play Emory Jones. I'm going to sit here and say start Anthony Richardson and play him every play. I don't think that's likely. So I'm going to put my likely part in here too. I think Emory Jones is going to play some. I don't necessarily agree with it unless Richardson is just not performing like we want, maybe somewhat expect him to. It's going to be tough versus this Georgia defense. But Dan Mullen's going to play Emory Jones. So I think we have to factor that in just a little bit. Hopefully the plays aren't wasted. Hopefully it's not a wasted drive. However it works, I think you need every play. Every play is going to be important in this game. But at least start AR, give him a huge majority of the snaps. I think that is Florida's best path to a victory. And I'm not saying Anthony Richardson will be able to, but if what we have seen so far this season is any indication about this Georgia defense, you've got to be able to take advantage of explosives, and that's what Anthony Richardson brings to the table. He's the better of the quarterbacks to try and get something consistently down the field. Not saying he'll be able to do it, but we know this is that's more likely with him than it is with Emory Jones from what we've seen so far this year. Explosive plays are going to have to happen. These 10, 11-play drives that Florida has put together so far this year, and credit to them for that. You haven't played a defense like this. Haven't played a defense that's going to be able to, to keep up with those 10, 11-play drives. I mean, those are not going to happen versus this Georgia defense. You might get one or two. Might. But if you're going to score in this Georgia defense, you're going to have to hit the explosives. You're going to have to use your athletes. That is Florida's path to a victory. And it's going to be tough for Richardson versus this Georgia defense. He's seen nothing like it. It starts up front. The playbook only opens up as long as he has time. Dan Mullen can scheme all he wants to, and he'll probably have a great game plan. That game plan is going nowhere if Florida doesn't block up front. Kirby Smart's going to play in heavy for Anthony Richardson. He probably sees that's Florida's best chance to a victory as well. I'm not saying he's going to just ignore what Emory Jones can bring to the table, but if you're going to scheme, all right, stop the explosive plays. If I'm Kirby Smart, I don't think Emory Jones is going to drive 10, 11 plays over and over again to beat my team. I don't think so. So, AR is going to be schemed up more so than he has before. Things won't be nearly as easy as they were versus LSU. And then there was much more put on film in that game for what Anthony Richardson can do and maybe what he likes to do. And let's hope he handles it well. Score early, get some confidence, take advantage of what might be a more limited playbook. Hopefully a lot of what is game planned can be executed. We've heard Mullen say that Richardson isn't as deep as Emory in the playbook, doesn't know the offense as much. We know if you compare the limitations, that doesn't matter. He's a playmaker. And if that has an effect, if Florida can get up early, then maybe not knowing the whole playbook, maybe it doesn't come into play as much. Get some points up early on offense. You need them. I think for confidence, and I think you're just going to need the points early. Make Georgia fight back somehow, some way. I think Florida's got to test Georgia deep. Going to be tough to block that defensive front consistently, to take too many deep shots. You're going to have to pick your spots. And it's going to be tough for this run game as well because of this Georgia front. So extend part of the game with the wide receiver screens that we've seen under Dan Mullen so much in his tenure. Go back to that Mississippi State game and that defensive front back in 2018 when Dan Mullen schemed up the wide receiver screen like crazy versus that Mississippi State defense and that defensive front. Now, I don't think it'll be used as much in that game. It can't be. This Georgia defense can pursue. They can defend east-west, but make them run east-west. Maybe they can try and tire out this Georgia defensive front. Now, they're deep up there. They can rotate, but, if they are going to rotate, anytime you can get a player like Jordan Davis off the field for a breather, that's good. That's some kind of check mark for Florida there. You're not going to beat Georgia going east-west all game, but I do think their front would dictate Florida needing to go to the screen game to be an extension of the run game. And also just get them running a bit more. Try and tire them out when you can. But I don't think you'll be able to do it consistently there. But I think also just to help that Florida run game, I don't think Florida's going to be able to run consistently on Georgia too much either. So kind of an extension of the run game as well. Now, Florida hasn't blocked the screen game great this year compared to the last few seasons. There's been some plays here or there, but, receivers in this game, more importantly, get the ball, get upfield. No dancing around. Just go get your yards. You can't get behind schedule on offense. Go get the yards. If it's only 2 or 3 yards, so what? It beats 2nd and 12, 2nd and 13 just because you didn't get upfield. Don't dance around. Catch the ball, get upfield, get some yards. But Florida's got to improve in that area of the blocking as well. The blocking hasn't been great there for the wide receiver screen, so maybe that's been an emphasis the last couple of weeks. But for it to be effective, Florida's got to get better in that area as well. So explosive plays, not long drives. Take your shots downfield. I don't think you're just going to be able to drop back and throw the ball down the field consistently. So it's going to be a good mixture of going vertical and going east-west on this Georgia defense. You got to keep them guessing, especially that defensive front. We'll see what the Florida run game can do with these quarterbacks. The zone read, quarterback power run, misdirection, whatever Dan Mullen can come up with to maybe at least get this Georgia defense front guessing more so than they have been. Now if they just come in and overpower you, it's going to be tough. But can you put some doubt in their mind early on for that to happen? Now here's the worry for me in looking at this, and I think why we should see more Anthony Richardson. Kirby Smart has been able to own Dan Mullen with the run first quarterback run approach style offense. Go back to 2017, a pretty good Mississippi State team goes into Athens and just gets bombarded by Georgia's defense there. And then with a quarterback that can't necessarily hit the balls down the field consistently, we saw that with Felipe Franks in 2018. It doesn't work consistently with this against this Georgia defense. We've seen this Georgia defense being able to take advantage of in recent years. Now, you heard us talk about it earlier. I don't know if it would be the same this year, but quarterbacks that can hit downfield passes, that's what hurt this Georgia defense. If Emory Jones was to trot out there and play a majority of the game or play the whole game, I think it plays into what Kirby Smart can defend really well and just plays into the limitations of Florida's offense just in general. And then pair that with what Kirby's been able to do in the past versus that style of offense versus Dan Mullen, and just what this defense has brought to the table so far this year. Anthony Richardson gives you the best opportunity to hit balls down the field, test the pass defense of Georgia. That's the path to victory there for the Gators. Not saying it will happen. Don't take it out of context. But if Florida's going to win, I think that will be the path there. So there's my look on offense right there. Of course, for Georgia, going to the other side of the ball is about who plays quarterback for them as well. You heard Robby say it sounds like maybe JT Daniels gets the nod. Maybe it doesn't really matter who starts and plays for Georgia back there because of this offensive line and this Georgia ground game. Because of that, the offense hits big plays with both quarterbacks. A lot off of play action because they get that run game going. Maybe a bit more with Daniels, but Stetson Bennett's been able to hit those passes as well. Both quarterbacks are helped by that run game and by just staying upright. This Georgia offensive line's only given up 4 sacks on the season. We know Grantham's history in this game. Now, did get 3 sacks last season versus Georgia, but in 18 and 19, barely even touched the quarterback with only 1 sack combined in those games. Now, a lot's changed, of course, since 18 and 19. Offensive coordinator for Georgia, quarterback for Georgia, but the offense is much better than last season. For Georgia, stats show how far they are just not giving up sacks 4 all year. Florida's been pretty good at getting to the quarterback, but not so much in the bigger games, not so much versus Georgia historically since Dan Mullen's been here. So we'll see if that can change as well. So hasn't translated for Florida all that much, but without pressure, Georgia isn't going to turn the ball over with their style of play. They haven't been turning the ball over much recently anyway. Stetson Bennett hasn't thrown an interception in his last 3 games. But that can change if Georgia starts and inserts JT Daniels. That's kind of what I was getting at with Robby and them too. The chemistry part of this of if JT Daniels is going to play and he's going to play more, or however Georgia decides to split it up, when he's in the game, I talked about that chemistry earlier. Would there be any adjustment time for him? He played in the first 3 games of the season for the Bulldogs. He threw a pick in the first 2 games, one versus Clemson, one versus UAB. Now, he didn't throw any in his last game versus Vanderbilt. In his last game, that's where he went 9 of 10 for 129 yards and 2 touchdowns. But is there any flow? Is there any chemistry issues by putting him back into the lineup? And you heard us talk about the receivers as well. So there could be some. And look, like I'm saying, I'm trying to point out a path to victory here. I'm not saying these things are going to happen, but these are the things I'll be looking for to happen if Florida somehow comes up on top of this game. And inserting all these new pieces back into the Georgia offense, can that lead to chemistry issues where Florida can cause a turnover or a quarterback holds the ball a little bit longer and gets a sack, fumble, or something like that. So those are things I want to look out for. That goes to the quarterbacks for Georgia, but this run game for Georgia is probably where we need to be focused even more, especially after what we saw the last game versus LSU for Florida. Georgia's definitely going to come in and test this Florida run defense. Do we get the performance Florida had versus Alabama and for a good portion of this season in run defense? Certainly hope so. But that means elevating the level of play on defense and doing the basics right. If Florida can get the basics right, they'll be much better. It's mostly basics for this Florida defense. Staying in your lane or getting in a lane, not rushing upfield, taking yourself out of the play. If you're on the edge, don't take yourself out of the play. Don't get upfield too much. And we've seen it time and time again. Be physical. Fight off your blocks. Be physical. Make a tackle. Florida needs to be able to rely on their defensive front to control this game, and for two reasons. Florida's linebackers struggle to run support consistently. They struggle by trying to take on blocks, trying to shed those blocks. But Florida needs to be better up front also, so these linebackers don't have to react so hard to play action. If Florida's defensive line can get the pressure and the linebackers can rely on that defensive line to get the pressure, they don't have to fight and bite so hard on play action. That's bothered Florida all year. Georgia's going to run a ton. And if the run game's working, if Florida bites hard in the play action, you do that. And Georgia's got a easy big play if that run game is working. So the path here, defensive line has to dominate. There is no other path here from what we've seen these teams do this season. So unless something weird happens, this has to happen, or it's another long day coming for the Florida defense. The defensive line has to come in and control the game. Saw it versus Alabama. That's the exact kind of performance Florida needs again. One more aspect of this, and I'm going to sound like a broken record, but it is a must in this game. Get off to a better start. Get off to a faster start. You heard me discuss that earlier for AR and the offense and the path to a victory, but it's got to happen for the defense too. For changing this game, 10-0. Go back to 2018, a 10-0 start for Georgia. 2019, another 10-0 start for Georgia. Last season, 14-0. Now, Florida was able to come back in each of those games and make a game of it and then winning last season. But maybe a better start wins you the game in 2019. In 2018, Georgia was just much better. We know that. But get out to a better start in 2019, Florida can win that game. So, get down in this game versus this Georgia defense. I'm not sure we want to find out if Florida can come back or not. So taking everything into account here, put it all together for a faster start. Offense, defense, you've got to get out to a faster start in this game. Put some kind of pressure on Georgia. Put some kind of pressure that they haven't faced so far this season on both sides of the ball. See how they react. The only time they've been down this season is a 3-0 Auburn lead. That's it. They haven't been able to taste their own blood. They haven't had to be down in the second half of a game or anything. Florida needs to get out to a fast start. I think it's imperative for a victory. I don't think you're coming back on this Georgia team. All that said, I don't like our Gators' chances here. Hoping for a victory. I'll be in the stands cheering for a Gator victory. I'll be Gator chomping all the way, but this one's going to be tough. I got a 34-17 Georgia victory here. I think AR will come in and do some nice things. I just don't think there'll be enough consistent stops on defense. I think Georgia will come in and be able to control the ground game enough that they'll hit some big plays. This will look like a typical Georgia game I think we've seen this year, especially lately versus Auburn and Kentucky. I think it's going to look a lot like this game. I think Florida can hang first half, you'll see some nice plays by Richardson. And I think, going down the field, I think some of those plays will be there, just nowhere near consistent. And, Florida's still going to need this run game to help it along on offense. And I think Georgia's going to stuff the Florida ground attack enough to where Florida just can't get enough consistency on offense. I think you'll see the explosives, but not enough. You'll see these explosive lead the scores, but Georgia's defense will tighten down. And it's just the youthfulness of Richardson. I love his playmaking ability. I think he'll make some plays. I think he'll make the unscripted play here and there, but I don't think enough to upset this Georgia team and this Georgia defense. So 34-17, Georgia. That's a dagger in my heart. It hurts to say. But of course, hoping Gators come out Saturday night. You can sit there and shout at me on Twitter and tell me how wrong I am. I'll take it. You can sit here on Sunday when we do our review, and I'll be as happy as I can be as you're telling me I was wrong. I hope that happens. I completely hope that happens. But just kind of just going by what we've seen so far, that's what we can go by. If you pick it upset, there's not really a reason to pick it, just besides the fact that you want it to happen, or there's not really a path for it. So a lot of it's just a lot of hope out there. But upsets happen. And that's just kind of where we're at going into this game. 34-17, that's my final score. My prediction for Georgia up beating Florida. Take a look around the SEC right quick. Light slate before we sign off here on Gators Breakdown. Missouri Vanderbilt at 3 o'clock. No noon games since the slate is light there. So no games till 3 o'clock. Missouri Vanderbilt SEC Network at 3:30, of course. Florida, Georgia in Jacksonville on CBS. Another good game at night. Here we go. Ole Miss, Auburn. Really, really good game there. So whether you're leaving the stadium, you can get home in time, maybe see the second half of that game, or if you're watching on TV, you'll be able to flip it over from Florida, Georgia, and catch Ole Miss and Auburn. That should be a very, very entertaining game there. And then also at 7 o'clock, Kentucky, Mississippi State also has the potential to be a pretty fun game. Kentucky with a week off last week, coming off their first loss of the season to Georgia a couple weeks ago, going to Starkville, taking on Mississippi State. We'll see if we can get some more good candy quotes there from Mike Leach after the game versus Kentucky. So, all right, there's your SEC slate this week. As I said, very light, only 4 games, bye weeks coming into play right now during this portion of the season. So, everybody, thank you so much for joining me here on Gators Breakdown, previewing Florida, Georgia. I know it's tough right now going into this game with this kind of outlook, but you got to go play the game, and not much football left this season. So, we'll try to enjoy the football aspect of it, and maybe, just maybe, we can talk about a Gator victory. Big upset for the Gators next week. Hopefully that's the case. So that'll do it. I am the host of Gators Breakdown, David Waters. You can find me on Twitter at GatorDave_SEC. Guys and girls out there, thanks for listening to this episode of Gators Breakdown.